We're here with Matt Welch. Matt is coming to us from San Francisco. He's a professional composer in the classical world. Many people might be familiar with Matt, but he's also an extremely accomplished Highland piper, having played with Simon Fraser University, been the pipe major of the Grade 2 Metro New York Pipe Band, and lots of other things. So thanks a lot for joining us, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and really interesting. You've got a new collection, a very different collection, very sort of adventurous, I think, called a new complete theory for the Highland bagpipe. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, in a nutshell, it is basically the work and thinking that I've been just working on for the bagpipe the last 30 years. And it comes in two parts. The first part is my Yale doctoral thesis. And that was basically a 6-chapter treatise on how bagpipe music is constructed. And it comes from, it's written in a way that composers can learn about the bagpipe so they can write for it. But it's also written from a perspective of the piper so that they can learn a little bit more about how their music is constructed and maybe ways to bring it into the 21st century. And the second half of the book is a collection of music that I've written specifically for the bagpipe, mostly solo music, Baker's Dozen of new pibrochs, light music, and Ceol Nua, which is a term that I coined, just meaning new music in Gaelic, of experimental pieces for the bagpipe.
Interesting. So we'll talk about Ceol Nua in a little bit, but it's interesting that your complete theory riffs off of Joseph McDonald's 1803 collection,
Yes.
which was a seminal work in Highland piping. And so your intention with this is to reach both Highland pipers, established pipers, plus people who might not be familiar with piping at all.
Absolutely. And I feel like, the Joseph McDonald, it was the first notation of bagpipe music, and specifically pibroch, which, all of those other books were built upon. Obviously not the Cantrek books, but the ones that preferred staff notation. And the curious thing about that book is that half of what's in there we don't do today. Mm-hmm. And Joseph McDonald was also a trained Baroque musician and composer and analyst. So it's a cute thing, and he was very much in two different types of worlds as a classical musician and as a piper. So I just wanted to bring that idea back.
Really interesting. And there are 13 pibrochs, call them traditional style pibrochs, that you've composed that are in your new work. Is pibroch today a growing art? Is it a place for creativity right now?
I think it is, and it might be very nascent, or it's like a rebuilding of the kinds of I would say the flames of wrath that create these types of compositions. I think we're trying to. I think it's a cradle for creativity in the beginning, and if you look at all the McCrimmon tunes and most of the great tunes of the repertoire, they all do something different, and also they all deal with serious ideas, and they all have multiple tempos and multiple feelings and multiple ranges of colors. And I really think that this, I do love light music and pipe band music, but I feel like there's an area of growth and depth that we can mine in pibroch, and room to broaden the structures.
Yeah, that said, your compositions, your pibroch compositions, do they follow the kind of normal building through variations? Would they be familiar to people of pibroch?
Yes, yeah. Actually, some of the tunes could be played by amateur pibroch players quite easily, and they might find some of the melodic lines refreshingly simple. And but also I do try to create slightly different ornamental structures and like changing how the Krumlua functions, how the theme and like creating a new style of Brebach movement. So I do, and also in one of them in particular, it's basically like a dual pibroch, and you can choose which path you want to go, whether you want to go in a Foskelcha direction or whether in a Brebach or in a conventional direction. And basically it's just shows you like, well, this is the compositional methodology of pibroch. How do you take the theme from beginning to end and keep it thoroughly in it, like continually new yet the same, and riding that emotional wave right to the end.
Really interesting. It's almost like a movie where you can pick the ending of it or the middle part of it.
Well,
develop your own plot line.
I loved reading those books as a kid, the choose your own adventure novel. And I got a lot out of rereading them and going in different directions and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
Now, Kilnua, this is brand new. This is something, a type of music, a genre almost that you've come up with. There are 13 Kilnua compositions by you in the work. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. The word itself, Kilnua, basically is something that I coined to translate the word new music, which is sort of a catchphrase in the contemporary classical world, of experimental procedures mixed with some sort of sense of historical method at the same time. So basically, Kilnua for me are compositions that I've done that try to adapt processes from experimental music and classical music, but maintaining a firm identity with like, oh, this is clearly a piece for bagpipes, or it's clearly a piece about pibroch variation styles, but only that. So sometimes I take all the things that I think of, what makes a pibroch, these 12 elements, and focus on one and expand that. Or, there's a piece that's only based on high A, different colorations and stuff. Another piece dissects the Donald Moore rundown and creates a cycle where you can create Philip Glass-esque additive rhythms out of the Donald Moore rundown. This stuff like this. And most of the pieces have required element of improvisation. You'll never play the piece the same way twice. Also, they have multiple entrances and exits so that you could play the piece in a new way of medley construction, so that you can play a bunch of pieces together, which is totally essential to sessions and the Celtic idiom, where you just stack up a bunch of short pieces. The Kilnua pieces have basically, it's like a transit system. You can go from this piece to this piece, and in the middle of this piece, slide over to this piece. And so you can create, basically, every time you play it, it'll be different. And I think that the music that you can play differently every time you get involved in it is very creatively satisfying, I feel, for a musician. And it's areas of, the great thing about, just an aside, Joseph McDonald wrote heavily about what are called voluntary preludes. He's the first and only person to ever really talk about improvisation in the art form of piping. And we all have tuning phrases. We all fiddle around and use our instrument in different ways before we think the actual music starts. So it also, Kilnua also examines what the raw potential of the instrument is, and tries to expand that as well.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, and looking at the tune titles, you used to live in Manhattan, I believe, and
yes.
You compared it, Kilnua, a little bit to the transit system, and it looks like there are different. Some of the tune titles of Third Street, some of the streets in New York, remind you of the New York transit system.
Yeah, absolutely, and just it's modular. It's like a lot of things in our cultures now. It's elective. I want to go here, and then from here I want to go here, and I'm going to go through this direction. I'm going to take the A train instead. So
that's really, really interesting. What about right now we're in month 6 at least of getting through the coronavirus crisis. we've written about in Pipes Drums about sort of times of crisis lend itself to creativity. Do you think right now is a time of great creativity in particularly the music world and the piping world?
It is that I would say that the classical music world, or in the music world in general, is devastated, devastated by its inability to connect in the same way that it had been. But it is inspired. Like in June, I was supposed to have the first scene of an opera premiere, but we did it on Zoom. So it's what it does is it's challenging people to stay creative and to remember what it's all about, and kind of in an interior way as well. We're having a lot more interior experiences, and the people that are motivated to play, pipers that I've talked to are playing their chanters every day. I've been practicing a lot more than usual, and for what? It's just for spiritual sustenance, feeling good about what you do. Why did we play this instrument? It makes you feel great, like that's like, it just consumes everything in your body and your ear, and it just feels good to do that right now.
Yeah,
Myself personally, I feel like I've had time, because I've my performances in the outside world are diminishing, and hopefully they'll pick up again. But I've had time to be very creative at home and to finish a lot of old projects, and like this.
Yeah, definitely. Some silver linings that we're all looking for and realizing, I think, during this crazy period. We have to ask you. I mean, there are so few Highland pipers who are part of the so-called, call it the real music world, or the world outside. How are Highland pipes considered, do you feel, among other musicians who don't know anything about it? What's your take on, what's your experience?
I've had well, see, the bagpipe, no matter where you go, every piper experiences this. You're either very welcome or you're very not welcome, and I find that I've had just the same mixed reactions to the bagpipe itself. There are musicians that are extremely excited about its potential. It's unique. I mean, extremely unique music, and it even like within the European classical, all those instruments developing there, they were all developed to play with each other after a number of years, and certain things were changed, like the clarinet, the flute, those all changed to be more adaptable in the orchestra. We've gone in this other direction, but there are people like hanging out with some of today's greatest living composers. They're interested in talking about pibroch. So, hanging out with Philip Glass and talking about pibroch, there's something in that music that excites classical composers and classical musicians. It is an uphill battle dealing with the instrument, and certain things, certain chanters that are just pitched in concert B flat have made things a lot easier. Even just classic drone reeds make things a heck of a lot easier when you don't have any tuning time and you just need to go on stage and play. So there are a lot of challenges getting it accepted, but I feel like there's a narrow area of experimental practitioners that are very much into the instrument, and it's starting to change.
Well, that's great to hear. And your new book seems to help, aims to bridge that gap just a little bit more. So
absolutely,
it's terrific. So Dr. Matthew Welch and his new complete theory for the Highland bagpipe. We really appreciate the time you took to speak with us today, and best of luck with the book.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Happy piping.
Cheers.